Hello, good morning. It's my first time in Jumpstarter and it's very amazed with the setup here. So I hope to get more knowledge around in the afternoon as well. So let us start with myself. I will introduce myself a little bit and then I'll pass on to both speakers. So I'm actually a climate scientist, study at the University of Cambridge. Because I come in as a personal capacity, so I did not disclose that I'm actually working in the Hong Kong Observatory as well. But I will use the name University of Cambridge for throughout the events. So shall we pass to Paul first? Can you
Okay.
introduce a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I'm Paul, CFO of EcoCeres. Actually, EcoCeres is a Hong Kong headquarter, Hong Kong incubated. I will say that Hong Kong incubated unicorn right now. Actually, we are incubated by Time Gas, 0003, the stock numbers, okay? So actually, 18 years ago, we started the journey of developing sustainable aviation fuel technology within Time Gas, okay? And I think it's 2008 at that moment. And after like 17 years until now, actually we have already carved out, spin off, and then we have undergoing a series of Series A and also Series B fundraising. And right now we are actually one of the global leader of SAF production as a sustainable aviation fuel. I think Junior just introduced a different kind of technologies that can help to decarbonize the aviation. Hydrogen definitely is one of them, and there's another one which is SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. I can explain more in details about this technology later on, but this is a very brief introduction of the company, of myself, and then I can pass it back to Andy.
Yeah. So maybe just a few words about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm with ZeroAvia. We believe that hydrogen electric powertrain for aviation is actually very practical ways to near completely eliminate carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. We are a startup. We're not a publicly traded company, so capital means a lot to us, and also the general confidence of the public of our industry is actually very critical for us. But we are very hopeful that our planes will one day be flying one of you guys. So, yeah.
So let us start with Paul first. So EcoCeres is producing the sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, hydro-treated vegetable oils, HVO, and cellulosic ethanol to help greenhouse gas reduction. I hope I get the terms right.
Yeah.
Can you explain a bit about how these have benefit on the environment?
Okay. Now let me explain what is sustainable aviation fuel, okay? Basically, use layman terms, okay? So we turn low value feedstock, just like used cooking oil and other kind of unuseful waste product into refineries, and then it come out to be jet fuel, a direct substitute of jet fuel, which is sustainable aviation fuel. Do you think it's amazing? Used cooking oil become jet fuel, right? So, but it's very difficult. That's why.
Sounds pretty good.
Yes, we turn that hot pot oil into jet fuel. This is crazy miracle. But actually, it's gone through 18 years of R&D, and by doing that, we can reduce the greenhouse gas emission of the aviation industry for 80 to 90%. So that's a huge contribution to climate fight, in terms of the aviation industry. And then actually our company has refineries, facilities in mainland China. We have three big refineries in mainland China. We have one big refineries in Malaysia coming up. And then, so this is a very CapEx intensive industry for sustainable aviation fuel. So, but in terms of climate fighting, I will say that hydrogen is of course one of them. Okay, but I will say that in the immediate future, the airline industry has already adopting sustainable aviation fuel. there's a different mandates happening in the world. In EU and UK, starting from this year, January 1st, there is a mandate, regulatory, limiting all the airline which take off from EU airport. Their gas tank need to fill up 2% SAF, you know, and 98% is original fossil fuel jet fuel, okay? But that 2% is a very good contribution already, you know, and also UK has that 2% mandate as well. That mandate, what we call Refuel EU Aviation Act, is gonna be enhanced. So that act has a target of 2030, 6%. And then in 2050, what Julia just mentioned, the net zero target year, that mandate limits all the airlines to have 70% of the fuel need to be used substitute by SAF. So that's a huge amount. Yeah.
May I follow on that? So to what extent is this achievable, and what are the challenges by 2050 or even now?
Yeah, of course, you know, there's some of the challenge. First of all, you know, SAF is much more expensive than jet fuel. If that's voluntary, you know, the airline's not gonna take it because it's not that economical, right? And we have at least 2.5 times more expensive than jet fuel, okay? First of all, this is the economics, so we have to reduce the price of SAF as well, okay? Increase the production, reduce the price. But the hiccup normally happening in the production, there's a lot of supplies kind of limitation. Building up a refinery is not easy. It's definitely not easy. It takes 2 to 5 years, you know, at least. So in this case, the supply side and also the limitation of feedstock, right? Imagine EU and UK 70% of the jet fuel need to be substituted by SAF. So how much used cooking oil we need to have? Imagine right now 2%, the used cooking oil is good. Okay, we can maintain. But 70%, you know, we will not eat that much, right? You know, right now 2%, and we said 35 times, we are not consuming 35 times more of used cooking oil, right? Okay, and also in EU, they always eat salad, right? They always eat those non-greasy stuff, okay? So we need to get this from mainland China, from Sichuan provinces, all the hot pot, right? So in this case, this feedstock is one of the problems. So of course, you know, our company recognized in the future, let's say in 2050, there will be not enough used cooking oil to provide the feedstock. However, that's why we use other technology to substitute the different kind of feedstock. You know, our refinery in Hebei, which is the northern part of China, they are using the technology of alcohol to jet. That means turning corn cob into SAF, into sustainable aviation fuel. Because there's a lot of supplies of corn cob, not the corn, but corn cob within China, within American, so there's no limitation of the feedstock in this case. So we are actually developing advanced technology for replacing using used cooking oil as a feedstock. So this is basically how we do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So to Julian, we know that ZeroAvia has taken a unique approach to fighting the rising global emissions by developing the hydrogen electric aircraft. Could you explain or expand on the main challenges you are facing along this journey?
Yeah, sure. Good question, right? So I think maybe there are a couple of key challenges, so to speak, right? First of all, there's the technological challenges. It's not that the science doesn't work, right? So we build on our first principles in physics and engineering. This is a very doable technology. And by the way, fuel cell has been around for decades. It's not a new technology. But then it is challenging because you are trying to put a new technology framework into an existing sector, right? So technological proof points and scalabilities, that's actually fundamentally a challenge. We see that as you can overcome that with hard work and due diligence on that. So that's one. I would say the second challenge is actually more harder to actually overcome. It's actually infrastructure readiness, right? Because if you think about it's not enough for us to be able to say, listen, I have a plane which can actually fly on hydrogen. You need the supporting framework. You need to have a place to land. Once you land, you need to have an infrastructure to refuel. your hydrogen, and the infrastructure is simply not there. And then related infrastructure, the energy type, the hydrogen, right now you can probably get hydrogen fairly easily, but then those are not green hydrogen. Basically meaning that if you burn fossil fuels to create hydrogen, that's really not clean energy, right? But then we're lucky, right now all the green energy has been growing tremendously, especially in China, Australia. Look at all the solar farms, right? Those are providing a lot of solid, ready-to-go infrastructure for us to generate green hydrogen, and then that actually helps us tackle that problem. So the infrastructure types of challenge. I would say the third one, as a startup company, I think we are also facing some challenges in fundraising as well. Fundraising is actually not as simple as you think, right? So we're not a software company, so the return in amount is probably going to be longer and larger, corresponding to a lot of the software-based services out there. But also, capital investment takes confidence, right? So if you're in a sector where every single day that you wake up, you're hearing some noise and judgments and naysayers, it makes it that much harder to actually convince your investors. So the way we do it basically is say, listen, believe in our technology, along the way make your proof points, make successful milestones, and then investors will look at what you can accomplish. And we are lucky enough to have very solid backers and up to this stage. But I would say overall those are three tranches of different challenges.
Right, thank you. So from the climate perspective, actually, human-induced climate change is already affecting many weather and climates around the globe. And in fact, science already proven that given the intermediate to high emission rates, we cannot actually limit the global rising temperature to 1.5 to 2 degrees. So there's actually an urgent need to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by us all. So now I have questions for both of you. What do you think about the current pace of global adaptation of climate-focused innovation, especially the adoption of SAF and also the integration of hydrogen electric aircraft into the aviation service? Shall we start with Paul first?
I would say that the paces, you can say, is slow, but it's progressing. Imagine our company actually, if there's no mandate, no regulatory pushing, that's not gonna very economical. But of course, I always say that the cheapest thing, the dirtiest thing is the cheapest. Okay, if you can endure a dirtiest environment, and then you pay the economics. So in this case, our company is lucky because we have the regulation support. The EU, the UK, and also Japan. Singapore has 1% mandate coming up next year. Australia target 10% mandate. And also in American, they use subsidy, these kind of things to use carrot instead of stick. However, because there's always political changes that may impacting the speed of the regulatory kind of, support. So I will say that lucky for us, we have the support here right now. After suffering the first 10 years of non-profitable kind of situation, but right now we are very profitable. Right now we have the mandate, and then we have the first mover advantage because right now we are one of the top 3 global SAF supplier in the whole world. Imagine there's a Hong Kong-based company become a global leader. Okay, so we are very proud of that because of the support from Tangas. In the first 10 to 15 years of the huge CapEx investment. But however, so we have the good days. We want others to have this kind of regulatory support in order to let the green technology to blossom, in the future. But we need the support from the regulatory because it's just based on economic sense, that is another story. Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, so in terms of timeline, I'll give you the answer that actually I just realized that we're lucky enough that the net zero or climate change takes the time scale of decades. And aviation also takes the time scale of improvement in decades. So it's much less of a problem of how many years do you count, but it depends on whether you act now or not, right? The choice is actually what do you decide? Do you decide to wait? In which case it's going to be disastrous. Or do you actually decide to act? In which case we're actually matching the two. I'll give you a simple example, right? So if I go to college today, I said, listen, I want to get my degree within 2 weeks. What will you say to me? Will you say you're crazy? Or you say, oh yeah, that's great, go for it. There's a natural rhythms and timeline, right? So I think using that as a layman example, I think that if we act now, and different companies have different roles to play, right? So Paul's company, they need to manage existing revenues and existing jetliners like United, they do have to maintain their revenue streams, but then they can actually invest in disruptive technologies. As a matter of fact, that's actually the role that we're playing, right? Airbus invests in us because we represent a disruptive force that can be complementary to them. Shell invested in us because we represent a totally disruptive model that they don't expect to happen next year, but rather in a long scheme, they do know that this is coming, right? So I think we're actually living in a very opportunistic time where we could make the action or decision to say, let's act now, because we know that 10 years down the road, literally, like Bill Gates said, don't estimate the impact that you can actually see that at that time.
Okay.
So.
Good message. So because of the time, let's final question for both of you. So what advice would you give to startups or emerging companies looking to innovate in the field of renewable fuels or sustainable aviation, and how to turn pilot projects like your 2018 little cars into full-scale operations? What challenges did you encounter during this process? Shall we start with Paul first?
I would say that the funding is very important. Okay, we are actually not an AI company. We use heavy CapEx. We also a hard technology, chemistry, engineering. Sorry, these kind of things. It's not like you're gathering a bunch of programmer and then putting up here and then spend 100 million that you can do these kind of things. You can imagine, look at the video by Julia. The whole engine, the combusting, these kind of very very heavy kind of materials need to consider, the physics, the chemistry, the engineering, these kind of things. So we need the funding. For us, we have a big father behind, and also we have Bain Capital to come in, and then so that we are able to become one of the global leaders. But in the future, I will say that for the colleague who's also working in green technology, so we need a patient, we need the investment, impact investment kind of focus to support us. Yeah.
What about Paul? Sorry, Julian.
So my advice and counsel for startups in a high-tech or hard-tech area is that, first of all, yes, we need smart people, but you really need to know your stuff. You really, really need to understand the first principles and physics and chemistries behind what you're doing. Because if you don't, and just smart, good luck, first of all. Second of all, I guess, go together, right? It's the same old thing. Because I realize that in the world that we're living in, rarely is the case that you and your own company can actually change the whole world. You need a lot of infrastructure partners, suppliers, and et cetera, et cetera. So think about how you can actually work with your colleagues in this industry and create an ecosystem that you can all thrive at, right? I keep on reminding my colleagues, this is not a zero-sum game. We're not competing with each other. We're building something new that we can actually sustain and build on and thrive at together. So go together and take a look at the ways that you can complement maybe your competing peers, right? Think about Shell. Think about Paul's. Maybe Paul's company can invest in us, right? In a way, we're complementary. We're all searching for that answer. But unfortunately, in the real world, there's rarely the case that you can find a silver bullet. So that's my advice.
Great. So great sharing by both Paul and Julian. Shall we give a round of applause?